What if the most powerful healing foods on the planet weren't invented by modern science, but were eaten thousands of years ago by the healthiest people who ever lived? Most people have no idea that while we're counting calories and chasing the latest diet trend, the Bible was already prescribing specific foods that science is now proving can fight disease, reduce inflammation, and transform your health at the cellular level. These aren't just spiritual symbols. They're nutritional powerhouses with real clinical research behind them. And today, I'm going to show you 20 of them that will completely change the way you eat and heal forever. Stick around, because number 13 on this list was so rare and prized in biblical times that kings literally traded it like currency. And nutritionists now say it's one of the most nutrient-dense foods ever studied. And number 20 was called the gift of God in ancient scripture. And modern oncologists are stunned by what it does to cancer cells. If you want ancient wisdom backed by modern science delivered straight to you every week, hit that subscribe button right now, because you don't want to miss what's coming. All right, let's get into it. Here are 20 biblical superfoods that will heal you instantly, ranked from extraordinary to absolutely life-changing. 1. Olive oil, the liquid gold of the ancient world. Let's start at the beginning, not just because olive oil is number 1 on this list, but because in the ancient world, olive oil was the beginning. It was food, fuel, medicine, and sacred substance all at once. The Bible references it over 140 times. Kings were anointed with it. Wounds were dressed with it. The Good Samaritan in Luke 10 poured oil and wine into a stranger's wounds. This wasn't random. It was medicine. And here's what modern science says. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the most rigorously studied foods on earth. The Mediterranean diet, built on olive oil as its cornerstone, has been linked in hundreds of clinical trials to reduced rates of heart disease, cancer, inflammation, cognitive decline, and all-cause mortality. The main compound responsible is oleocanthal, a polyphenol that works almost identically to ibuprofen at reducing inflammation. But ancient olive oil wasn't the refined, heat-processed product many people buy today. Cold-pressed, unfiltered, freshly harvested olive oil is a living food loaded with antioxidants, vitamin E, and healthy monounsaturated fats that the body recognizes and uses immediately. Here's the traditional use. A tablespoon of quality extra virgin olive oil taken daily, used generously in cooking, and applied topically for skin conditions and wound healing. The people of the Bible didn't take supplements. They poured this over everything. 2. Raw honey, heaven's antimicrobial. Honey and milk are under your tongue. Song of Solomon. Eat honey, for it is good. Proverbs. Jonathan dips his rod in honey, and his eyes brightened. This isn't poetic coincidence. The Bible consistently presents honey as a food that gives strength, clarity, and life. Raw honey is one of the most powerful natural antimicrobials ever studied. Clinical trials have confirmed it can kill antibiotic-resistant bacteria, including MRSA, because it creates hydrogen peroxide on contact with tissue, has a low pH that kills pathogens, and contains a protein called defensin 1 that actively destroys bacteria. A special type called Manuka honey is now used in certified wound dressings in hospitals worldwide. But here's the important word: raw. The moment you heat honey past about 40 degrees Celsius, you begin destroying the enzymes and beneficial compounds that make it medicinal. The honey our ancestors ate, harvested directly from hives, unfiltered, unheated, was functionally different from the clear, shelf-stable product in most grocery stores. The traditional use is straightforward. Raw honey on wounds to prevent infection and accelerate healing. A spoonful at the first sign of a sore throat, mixed with warm water and lemon for immune support. And unlike refined sugar, raw honey in moderate amounts has a relatively low glycemic impact because of its fructose composition and enzyme content. This is the food that kept desert travelers, soldiers, and prophets going for centuries. It doesn't expire. Archaeologists have found 3,000-year-old honey in Egyptian tombs that was still edible. If you want one food from this list to start with, this is it. It's the gift that was sweet and healing long before we understood the science behind why. 3. Figs, the medicinal fruit of prophets. Here is a detail most people miss. When King Hezekiah was dying from a deadly infection, a boil or severe skin ulcer, the prophet Isaiah didn't just pray over him. He ordered a poultice of figs pressed onto the wound. 2 Kings, chapter 38, and Hezekiah recovered. Modern science has caught up to Isaiah's prescription. Figs contain compounds called phycin, a proteolytic enzyme that breaks down dead tissue and promotes wound healing. They also contain psoralen and benzaldehyde, compounds with documented antimicrobial properties. Fresh fig latex has been shown in studies to inhibit bacterial growth and support skin healing. But figs aren't just for wounds. They're extraordinarily rich in soluble fiber, specifically pectin, that feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut. They contain magnesium, potassium, calcium, and B vitamins in concentrations that make them one of the most mineral-dense fruits you can eat. In a world without multivitamins, figs were the supplement. The traditional use: fresh figs eaten at their peak ripeness for gut health and energy, dried figs year-round for sustained nutrition, and the ancient poultice practice, applying mashed fresh figs to inflamed skin, deserves more modern investigation than it's received. 4. Dates, the original energy bar. If you were a soldier, a trader, or a pilgrim crossing the ancient Middle East, dates kept you alive. Calorie-dense, naturally shelf-stable, rich in minerals and quick sugars, dates are the original survival food. The date palm is mentioned more than any other fruit tree in the Bible and the Quran combined. It wasn't celebrated for its beauty. It was celebrated because it fed people. Dates contain natural sugars, glucose and fructose, that enter the bloodstream quickly and provide rapid energy. But unlike refined sugar, they come packaged with fiber, magnesium, potassium, copper, manganese, and B vitamins. Studies show dates can improve iron levels, support bone density, and even appear to have benefits for labor in pregnant women. Multiple clinical trials have found that women who consumed dates in the final weeks of pregnancy had significantly faster and smoother deliveries. Dates also contain polyphenols and antioxidants that reduce inflammation and protect against oxidative stress. The tannins in dates have antimicrobial properties. Even the pits were ground and used medicinally in traditional Arabic medicine. The traditional use is almost embarrassingly simple. Eat them. 3 to 5 dates as a quick energy source, a natural sweetener in cooking, or a way to break a fast. There's a reason Ramadan fasting is traditionally broken with dates. The body absorbs them rapidly and gently after a period without food. 5. Pomegranates, the antioxidant king. The pomegranate appears in Mosaic law, in the adornments of the temple, and throughout the poetry of Scripture as a symbol of abundance, beauty, and life. There were 200 carved pomegranates on the pillars of Solomon's temple. This wasn't decoration. It was a statement about what this fruit meant, and modern antioxidant science is fascinated by it. Pomegranates contain a compound called punicalagin, found almost nowhere else in nature, that breaks down into urolithins in the gut. Compounds that have shown remarkable anti-inflammatory and even potential anti-cancer effects in research. Pomegranate juice has been shown in clinical trials to reduce blood pressure, lower LDL oxidation, improve arterial health, and reduce inflammation markers like CRP. The juice and seeds are packed with polyphenols at concentrations that outrank red wine, green tea, and blueberries. And the rind, which most people discard, is even more medicinally concentrated. Traditional healers across the Middle East used pomegranate rind tea for diarrhea, intestinal parasites, and inflammatory gut conditions. The traditional use: eat the seeds fresh, drink the fresh pressed juice, or use the dried rind steeped in hot water as a tea for gut infections. The whole fruit, not just the juice extract and supplements, provides the full spectrum of compounds, the way the body evolved to receive them. Pomegranates are slower to eat than most fruits. Extracting those jewel-like seeds takes effort. But perhaps that's part of the point. The most valuable things in the ancient world required work, and this fruit rewards the effort with something that modern pharmacology is still trying to fully understand. 6. Lentils, the food of prophets and paupers. The Bible's most famous lentil story is a cautionary tale. Esau trades his birthright for a bowl of red lentil stew. That seems extreme until you realize that in the ancient world, lentils weren't peasant food. They were survival food, dense, filling, shelf-stable for years when dried, and nutritionally extraordinary. Lentils are one of the highest plant-based sources of protein, around 18 grams per cooked cup, along with iron, folate, zinc, magnesium, and potassium. They were the food of soldiers, laborers, and prophets alike because they provided what heavy work demanded: sustained energy, muscle repair, and mineral replenishment. Modern nutrition science confirms that lentils have a remarkably low glycemic index, despite their carbohydrate content, meaning they provide steady energy without blood sugar spikes. Their high fiber content feeds gut bacteria and reduces cholesterol. Studies show regular legume consumption is one of the strongest predictors of healthy aging in population research. Communities around the world that live the longest consistently eat large amounts of legumes. The traditional preparation involved soaking, slow cooking, with aromatic herbs like cumin and coriander, and serving with olive oil. This isn't just cooking tradition. Soaking and cooking lentils reduces anti-nutrients like phytic acid that can interfere with mineral absorption, making their nutrition far more bioavailable. 7. Barley, the humble grain that outlasted everything. Barley is not glamorous. It was the food of the poor, of soldiers on campaign, of sailors at sea. When Jesus multiplied the loaves and fish for 5,000 people in John 6, those loaves were barley bread. Barley was the grain of ordinary people, and it turns out, ordinary people were eating one of the most gut-friendly grains ever studied. Barley contains the highest concentration of beta-glucan of any grain, a type of soluble fiber that has been so convincingly proven to lower cholesterol and stabilize blood sugar that the FDA allows a health claim on food products containing it. Beta-glucan forms a gel in the gut that slows glucose absorption, reduces LDL cholesterol, feeds beneficial bacteria, and enhances immune function. Barley also has a lower glycemic index than wheat or rice, meaning it provides sustained energy without the crash. Studies show it outperforms oats, already considered a heart-healthy food, in its effects on post-meal blood sugar. For a grain that costs almost nothing and grows in nearly any climate, it's an extraordinary food. The traditional preparation was simple: whole barley cooked as a porridge or ground into flat bread. Pearled barley, with the outer hull removed, is more available today, but hulled barley retains more of its fiber and nutrition. Even pearled, it remains one of the best carbohydrate sources you can eat. 8. Ancient wheat, einkorn and emmer, not the wheat you think now. Here is an important distinction that changes everything. When the Bible talks about wheat, it is not talking about modern commodity wheat. It's talking about ancient varieties, primarily einkorn and emmer, that are genetically, structurally, and nutritionally completely different from the dwarf wheat that fills modern bread and pasta. Modern wheat was developed in the mid-20th century to maximize yield per acre. It succeeded spectacularly at that goal, but in the process, it created a grain with a dramatically different gluten structure, higher starch content, and fewer micronutrients than its ancestors. Einkorn, by contrast, has 14 chromosomes compared to modern wheat's 42. It has a different type of gluten that many people who react to modern wheat tolerate without issue. It has higher protein, more beta-carotene, lutein, riboflavin, and antioxidants per serving. Studies on einkorn show its starch is more slowly digested, producing a lower glycemic response. Its antioxidant content is significantly higher, and because it hasn't been bred for maximum gluten development, its dough behaves differently. It makes denser, more nutritious bread that was standard throughout the ancient world. The traditional preparation was slow fermented sourdough, which further breaks down gluten proteins and phytic acid, making the grain easier to digest and its minerals more absorbable. Ancient bread was not a refined white loaf. It was dense, dark, and full of the whole grain. You can find einkorn flour today. It's not cheap, but for anyone who has struggled with modern wheat, it may be the wheat your digestive system was actually built for. The grain of the Bible wasn't what's making people sick. What's making people sick is what we turned it into. 9. Grapes, from vine to vitality. The vine is one of the most spiritually loaded plants in all of Scripture. I am the vine, you are the branches. Grapes appear at Noah's first act after the flood, at the Passover table, throughout the Song of Solomon, and in virtually every agricultural metaphor Jesus uses. This plant was central to life in the ancient world, and it turns out for very good reason. Fresh grapes, raisins, and grape juice all contain resveratrol, quercetin, and anthocyanin, polyphenols that have been heavily studied for their effects on cardiovascular health, inflammation, and even longevity. Resveratrol in particular activates sirtuins, proteins associated with cellular repair and extended lifespan, and has been one of the most exciting compounds in aging research for the past 2 decades. The skin and seeds of grapes contain the highest concentration of these compounds. Fresh whole grapes, eaten with skin, provide fiber, potassium, vitamin C, and vitamin K alongside these polyphenols. Raisins concentrate the sugars and minerals, but lose some of the volatile compounds. Each form has its place. Traditional use in the ancient Middle East meant fresh grapes in season, raisins year-round for sustained energy and portable nutrition, and grape leaves used as food wrappers and medicinally for inflammatory conditions, something still practiced in Mediterranean cooking today. 10. Wine, in moderation, the ancient medicine. Let's be careful here, because this one requires nuance. The Bible does not universally praise wine. It also warns against excess. But it does treat wine, used wisely and in moderation, as medicine. Use a little wine for your stomach's sake, Paul tells Timothy in 1 Timothy 5:23. The Good Samaritan pours wine into wounds as an antiseptic. This was not metaphor. Diluted wine, which is largely how the ancient world consumed it, has genuine antimicrobial properties. Studies have shown that wine at moderate concentrations kills common gut pathogens, including E. coli and salmonella, more effectively than the same amount of pure alcohol. In a world without water treatment, a small amount of wine mixed with water was genuinely protective. And the polyphenols in red wine, particularly resveratrol and proanthocyanidins from grape skins, are the subject of decades of cardiovascular research. The so-called French paradox, low rates of heart disease despite a rich diet, has been partly attributed to red wine consumption. Controlled studies show moderate red wine intake associated with improved HDL cholesterol and reduced platelet aggregation. The key phrase is moderation. One small glass of quality red wine with a meal, in the context of a whole food diet, the way people actually drank in the biblical world, diluted with food as part of community, is a very different thing from what modern alcohol culture looks like. This is one of those foods where the context of consumption matters as much as the food itself. Use the way Scripture describes it, sparingly, purposefully, as medicine. It has a place on this list. Used carelessly, it doesn't. Real quick, I want to pause here because a lot of people ask me, this is all great, but where do I actually get this stuff? The real versions, not the watered-down supermarket versions. That's the right question, and it matters more than most people realize. Because here's the problem. A lot of what's sold today as these foods isn't actually what the Bible was talking about. Most commercial olive oils are cut with cheap seed oils and never cold-pressed. Most honey is heated, filtered, and stripped of its enzymes. It's basically sweet syrup. And if you want to grow your own biblical foods from seed, good luck finding heirloom varieties at a big box garden center. So I did the research. I found the sources I actually trust, and I linked them all in the description below. Now let's get back to the list, because we're just getting to the ones that are going to genuinely surprise you. 11. Fish, the omega-3 covenant. Fish is everywhere in the Gospels. The disciples were fishermen. The miraculous feedings involved fish. Jesus ate fish after the resurrection to demonstrate his physical presence. This wasn't coincidence. In the culture of first-century coastal Israel, fish was the primary protein source for most people, and it turns out it may have been one of the most important dietary choices ever made. Fatty fish, sardines, anchovies, tilapia from the Sea of Galilee, are among the richest sources of omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, on the planet. These are essential fats that the body cannot manufacture. They must come from food. DHA makes up a significant portion of brain cell membranes. EPA has powerful anti-inflammatory effects throughout the body. The research on omega-3s is some of the strongest in all of nutritional science. Regular fish consumption is associated with dramatically lower rates of cardiovascular disease, depression, cognitive decline, inflammatory conditions, and all-cause mortality. Populations that eat fish regularly, Mediterranean coastal communities, Japanese fishing villages, consistently outperform their inland counterparts in health outcomes. And the fish of the biblical world were eaten whole, simply grilled over charcoal as Jesus prepared them in John 21. No batter, no processing, no seed oil frying that obliterates the omega-3 content. The nutrition was preserved because the preparation was simple. 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish per week is what modern health guidelines recommend. The people in the Gospels ate it because it was what they had. They happened to have one of the most powerfully health-promoting foods on earth. Sometimes the simplest diets were the wisest ones. 12. Goat's milk, the probiotic of the promised land. The land flowing with milk and honey was not flowing with pasteurized, homogenized, vitamin D fortified cow's milk. It was flowing with the milk of goats, a fundamentally different food that the human gut handles very differently. Goat's milk has smaller fat globules and a different protein structure than cow's milk. Its primary protein is A2 casein rather than the A1 casein in most commercial cow's milk, which many researchers believe is better tolerated by human digestion. The fat particles in goat's milk are naturally homogenized. They don't separate and don't require industrial processing. And fresh, traditionally produced goat's milk is rich in beneficial bacteria, natural probiotics that support gut health. Studies show goat's milk is easier to digest for people who struggle with cow's milk, produces less inflammatory response in the gut lining, and has a prebiotic effect supporting beneficial gut microflora. Its mineral content, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, is highly bioavailable. It also contains medium-chain fatty acids, particularly caprylic acid, that have antimicrobial and antifungal properties. In traditional Middle Eastern diets, goat's milk was consumed fresh, fermented into yogurt and kefir, or aged into simple cheeses. Each form provides different benefits. Fresh milk for quick nutrition, fermented products for probiotic richness, cheese for concentrated minerals. Goat's milk got sidelined by industrial dairy because goats produce less milk than cows and don't scale as easily. But for anyone dealing with dairy sensitivity, sluggish digestion, or gut dysbiosis, this ancient food, the milk of the promised land, may be exactly what their body has been missing. 13. Hyssop, the purification herb with real power. Here we are at number 13, the one I teased at the beginning. Hyssop. It's used in the purification rituals of Leviticus. In Psalm 51, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." And it appears at the crucifixion, where a sponge is offered to Jesus on a hyssop branch. For centuries, this was treated as purely symbolic. And then researchers started analyzing hyssop and found that the symbolism was built on something real. Hyssopus officinalis contains carvacrol and thymol, the same antimicrobial compounds found in oregano and thyme, two of the most powerful natural antiseptics known. Studies have confirmed hyssop has genuine antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal properties. It's been shown to inhibit the herpes simplex virus. Its expectorant compounds help clear mucus from the lungs, and it has anti-inflammatory effects that explain its traditional use for respiratory infections and wounds. When you understood this, the purification rituals suddenly made functional sense. If you were using hyssop to cleanse, to wipe down surfaces, to sprinkle on persons and objects after disease, you were actually applying a genuine antimicrobial agent. God's instructions were practical. They worked. Traditional use includes hyssop tea for respiratory infections, coughs, and bronchitis, hyssop tincture as a topical antiseptic, and the fresh plant used in cooking as an aromatic herb similar to thyme. The taste is strong and slightly bitter, a characteristic of many medicinal herbs that indicates active compound. Hyssop got forgotten in mainstream herbal medicine, dismissed as a decorative Bible herb. But the science is clear. This little plant was doing real work in the ancient world, and it still can. 14. Cumin, mentioned by Jesus himself. This is the only spice on this list specifically named by Jesus. In Matthew 23:23, he criticizes the Pharisees for carefully tithing even their herbs, mint, dill, and cumin, while neglecting justice and mercy. The fact that cumin was being tithed tells you how valued it was. You tithe things of real worth. Cumin has been used medicinally for at least 4,000 years across the Middle East, India, and North Africa for digestion, blood sugar, and infection. And modern research has confirmed every one of those traditional uses. Cumin contains a compound called cuminaldehyde that has demonstrated antimicrobial effects against a wide range of bacteria and fungi. Studies show cumin can lower fasting blood sugar and improve insulin sensitivity in people with type 2 diabetes. It stimulates bile production and digestive enzyme activity, reducing bloating and improving nutrient absorption. And it's a significant source of iron. 3 grams of cumin provides about 20% of daily iron needs. Perhaps most interestingly, cumin has shown preliminary evidence in animal studies of anti-cancer properties and memory protective effects. The ancient world used it heavily and intuitively. Modern science is methodically confirming why. The traditional use is straightforward. Ground cumin in cooking, toasted cumin seeds in bread and stews, cumin tea for digestive upset. This was a daily food and medicine, simultaneously in biblical households. The fact that Jesus referenced it in teaching wasn't random. In the ancient world, even a small herb garden held genuine medicine. 15. Coriander, the detox herb hidden in bread. When God provided manna in the wilderness, Scripture describes it. It was like coriander seed, white. Whether that's a precise botanical identification or a comparative description, coriander seed appears in the most miraculous food story in the entire Bible. That's not nothing. Coriander seed, the dried fruit of the cilantro plant, has a rich medicinal history across Egyptian, Persian, and Israelite cultures. It was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. It was used in ancient medicine for digestive complaints, anxious nerves, and inflammatory pain. Modern research has found that coriander seed has genuine anxiolytic effects. Animal studies show it reduces anxiety comparably to pharmaceutical diazepam in certain models. It has anti-inflammatory compounds, including linalool and flavonoids. It shows antimicrobial activity, and one of its most fascinating modern applications is in heavy metal detoxification. Preliminary research suggests cilantro and coriander can help mobilize mercury and other heavy metals from tissues. Its digestive benefits are well supported. Coriander seed tea has been used for centuries for gas, bloating, and intestinal cramps, and studies confirm it reduces intestinal spasms and has carminative effects. The traditional use: ground coriander seed in bread, stews, and spice blends. Coriander tea for digestive upset. Fresh cilantro leaves, the same plant, used generously in cooking as both flavoring and functional food. It was everywhere in biblical cuisine for the same reason it's everywhere in traditional cuisines today. It made food taste good and made people feel better after eating. 16. Garlic. The food. The Israelites mourn. This is one of the most emotionally charged food references in all of Scripture. When the Israelites are wandering in the wilderness, eating only manna, they break down and weep. And one of the things they specifically mourn is garlic. Numbers 11:5. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt for nothing. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. They missed garlic so much it made them cry. And if you understand what garlic actually does, their grief makes complete scientific sense. Garlic is one of the most comprehensively studied foods in all of nutritional medicine. Allicin, the compound created when garlic is crushed or chopped, is a broad-spectrum antimicrobial active against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. Clinical trials have shown that regular garlic consumption reduces the frequency and severity of colds and flu. Multiple studies show it lowers blood pressure and LDL cholesterol. It reduces platelet aggregation. It has documented liver protective effects. Raw, freshly crushed garlic is most potent. Allicin is volatile and degrades with heat. Traditional medicine across the Middle East and Mediterranean used it in every possible form: raw in dressings and preserves, cooked in stews, infused in oil, even inserted into the ear canal for ear infections. Egyptian medical papyri list garlic in over 20 medicinal preparations. 17. Onions, the prebiotic king of biblical kitchens. Listed right alongside garlic in Numbers 11, the great lament of the wilderness. Onions were a staple food across every economic class in the ancient world. Egyptian laborers who built the pyramids were partially paid in onions and garlic. Pharaohs were buried with them, and the science tells us exactly why they were so valued. Onions are one of the richest dietary sources of quercetin, a polyphenol with powerful anti-inflammatory, antihistamine, and antioxidant properties. Clinical trials have shown quercetin reduces blood pressure, inhibits inflammatory pathways, and may reduce allergy symptoms. Onions are also extraordinarily rich in inulin-type fructans, prebiotic fibers that specifically feed the beneficial bacteria in the colon, particularly Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus strains. Before anyone understood what the microbiome was, the ancient world was instinctively building a diet that fed it well. Garlic, onions, leeks, all members of the allium family, all rich in prebiotics, were daily staples. The result was a gut ecosystem that functioned the way it was designed to. The sulfur compounds in onions also have detoxification effects, supporting liver enzyme activity that processes and eliminates toxins. And raw onions have been used topically for centuries, applied to insect bites, minor burns, and congested chests, with some research support. Traditional use: onions raw in salads and pickles for maximum quercetin, cooked in virtually everything for flavor and prebiotic fiber, and onion broth for sick recovery. The people who mourned the onions of Egypt weren't being dramatic. They knew what they were losing. 18. Almonds, the symbol that fed the body. God told Moses to design the lampstand of the tabernacle, the menorah, with cups shaped like almond blossoms. Aaron's rod miraculously budded with almonds. The almond was chosen as a symbol of watchfulness and divine initiative, the first tree to blossom in spring. And it turns out this symbolic choice was backed by extraordinary nutritional wisdom. Almonds are among the most nutrient-dense foods on Earth, gram for gram. They are rich in vitamin E. 1 ounce provides about 37% of the daily requirement, in the form of alpha-tocopherol, a fat-soluble antioxidant that protects cell membranes from oxidative damage. They are high in magnesium, which supports over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body and is deficient in a large proportion of the modern population. They provide monounsaturated fats, protein, calcium, and fiber in a package that the body absorbs and uses with remarkable efficiency. Clinical trials have shown that regular almond consumption lowers LDL cholesterol, reduces post-meal blood sugar spikes, improves gut microbiome diversity, and supports healthy body weight by promoting satiety. Studies show that the fat in almonds is less fully absorbed than expected. The cell wall structure means some passes through the gut intact, feeding bacteria rather than being stored. Traditional consumption was simple: raw or lightly roasted almonds as a daily food, almond paste in cooking and medicine, and pressed almond oil for skin and wound care. The ancient world had stumbled onto a near-perfect food and built sacred architecture around its flour. 19. Pistachios, the nut of patriarchs. When Jacob sends his sons to Egypt to buy grain during the famine, he instructs them to bring gifts to impress the Egyptian official, and pistachios make the list. Genesis 43:11. If Jacob thought pistachios were a suitable gift for an Egyptian ruler, understand what that says about their value. These were not cheap, common snacks. They were a luxury food, a treasure, and modern nutrition confirms they were worth treasuring. Pistachios are uniquely high in lutein and zeaxanthin, carotenoids associated with eye health and protection against macular degeneration. They contain more potassium than most nuts, supporting blood pressure regulation. They have a high ratio of essential amino acids for a plant food, making them an excellent complementary protein source. What makes pistachios especially interesting is their prebiotic fiber content. Studies have shown that regular pistachio consumption significantly increases beneficial gut bacteria, particularly Bifidobacterium, more so than most other nuts tested. They also contain resveratrol and other polyphenols that support cardiovascular health. Clinical research on pistachios specifically has shown improvements in blood sugar control, lipid profiles, and inflammatory markers. Their relatively low caloric absorption, due to cell wall structure, means they provide more satiety per calorie than their label suggests. The patriarch Jacob understood value. He included pistachios among his finest gifts, not just for their taste, but for what they represented: abundance, health, and the generosity of a land that could produce such things. We'd do well to treat them the same way. 20. Locust beans. Carob, the wilderness survival food. And here we are at number 20, the one I saved for last, because it may be the most extraordinary story on this list. John himself had clothing of camel's hair and a leather belt around his waist, and his food was locusts and wild honey. Matthew 3:4. For centuries, biblical translators and commentators have debated what locusts means here. Many scholars, particularly those familiar with the landscape of the Judean wilderness, argue that this refers not to insects, but to the pods of the carob tree, Ceratonia siliqua, known throughout the ancient Middle East as locust beans, or St. John's bread. The carob tree grows wild throughout the region where John ministered. Its sweet, bean-like pods have sustained desert travelers for thousands of years, and combined with wild honey, you have a complete survival diet of remarkable nutritional power. Carob pods contain roughly 50% natural sugars, primarily sucrose, glucose, and fructose. But unlike refined sugar, they come packaged with extraordinary fiber content, up to 40% dietary fiber by dry weight. This fiber is mostly insoluble, making carob a powerful gut regulator, used traditionally for both diarrhea and constipation. Carob also contains calcium, iron, potassium, and magnesium in meaningful quantities. It's naturally gluten-free. It contains no caffeine, no oxalates, making it safe for kidney stone sufferers who must avoid chocolate. And no theobromine. But here's what makes carob truly remarkable as a survival food. It contains compounds called condensed tannins, or proanthocyanidins, that have documented antimicrobial and anti-diarrheal effects. Studies have shown carob powder to be effective against rotavirus and other gut pathogens in children. It was actually used in European hospitals for childhood diarrhea before pharmaceutical options became standard. The tannins in carob also bind to proteins and slow digestion, moderating glucose absorption and providing that sustained, slow-burning energy that sustained a prophet in the wilderness for years. Traditional use: carob pods eaten raw as a sweet, chewy food, carob flour used in bread and porridge, carob syrup as a sweetener and medicine for respiratory conditions. And here's the connection that ties this whole list together. Carob, eaten alongside wild honey, provides what the biblical wilderness diet required: natural sugars for energy, fiber for gut health, minerals for endurance, and antimicrobial compounds for protection against infection. If John the Baptist was really living on carob and honey, he wasn't suffering. He was thriving. He was eating two of the most medicinally powerful foods in the ancient world, while everyone else in civilization ate elaborate meals and grew weak. Sometimes the wilderness diet is the wise diet. Sometimes the food that gets forgotten is the food that deserves to be remembered most. 20 foods, thousands of years of use, centuries of accumulated wisdom that we nearly threw away in the rush to replace everything natural with something manufactured. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The people who wrote these ancient texts weren't primitive. They were observant. They paid attention to what healed them and what sustained them, and they built their culture, their rituals, their agriculture, and even their theology around those observations. And now, modern science, with its clinical trials, its double-blind studies, its biochemical analysis, keeps arriving at the same conclusions. Olive oil reduces inflammation. Honey kills bacteria. Barley lowers cholesterol. Garlic fights infection. Almonds protect the heart. The book was right. It just didn't explain the mechanism, because the mechanism wasn't the point. The food was the point. The healing was the point. Before I let you go, I want to make sure you actually have a path forward, because information without action is just entertainment. Everything we talked about today is available to you. But, and I can't stress this enough, quality matters enormously with these foods. The difference between medicinally active raw honey and the bear-shaped bottle at the grocery store is not a small difference. It's the difference between food that heals and food that just tastes similar. Same with olive oil. Same with ancient grains. Same with every single item on this list. So here's what I've put together for you in the description. For the foods, I've linked to the specific brands and sources I trust for the highest quality versions of what we discussed today. And for seeds, if this video lit a fire in you to grow some of these yourself, I have linked to the heirloom seed companies I recommend. Drop a comment below and tell me which food surprised you most. Are you team medicinal herbs, team ancient grains, team nuts and fruit? I read every single comment. If you haven't subscribed to Homestead Roots, hit that button now and ring the bell so you never miss a video. We post every week and we're just getting started. See you in the next one.